Afternoon, actually. Woo! Yes, we are on episode 5. And if there's any way to come back from a post wedding, it's to these two geniuses here. We have literally the recruitment legends, Vanessa Rath and Kalpesh Baxi. I don't know how else to describe it to everybody. Now, I'm going to say not much more because I don't need to, because we've got the people here to do it. So, Vanessa and Kalpesh, please take the floor and take it away. See you later,
Thank you
everyone.
very much. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jahisha, and congratulations.
Yeah. And that's a bit I was going to say, exactly, Vanessa. For anyone that doesn't know, Jahisha got married last week, and she was that committed to making sure she didn't miss today's show. She's moved her mini moon back and her maxi moon as well. So coming through. So hi everyone. Look, we are at episode 5 of the AI Impact series for Team. I'm still Kalpesh Baxi. Still love recruitment. Tried to leave about 50 times. Keep coming back for more. You'll notice there is the chat, the comments, depending on where you're watching this. Put your feedback in, put your comments in. We're going to do something different. So Vanessa and I have, I'm going to hand it over to the lady herself to introduce herself rather than me doing a bad job. But today's all about it. Just to give everyone a reminder, session 1, we talked about how do you prompt like a pro, or how do you start prompting like a pro. Session 2 was about the AI-fiable steps in recruitment and when you should keep it human, when you should think about using AI. Session 3 was about how do you do time management in an AI world. So, how do you do that time blocking, that follow-up, etc. Session 4 was with Jeremy Snell talking about how do you use those LLMs to help build tools, etc. And session 5 is with this lady. So I met Vanessa, is it 2 years ago now? I think Vanessa at Team.
Yeah, conference? I think it was about 2 years ago. First Team Annual Conference.
Yeah, so Team Annual Conference. So at this stage, I'm going to be quiet and say, do you want to tell everyone who you are?
Excellent. I'll do that. So yes, again, first of all, congratulations to Jahisha. I hear a rumor the Maxi Moon might be somewhere in Africa. We're just not quite sure. Hopefully it's the southern part of Africa. So let me just quickly introduce myself. So thanks, first of all, for having me on the show. I've really looked forward to this for a long time. My name is Vanessa Rath. I'm based in sunny South Africa. And what I do is a lot of things at the moment. I seem to be super busy. I do a lot in the AI space. So I'm an AI strategist and consultant, which means that I help recruitment agencies how to get better at using their AI, how to utilize their tech stacks better, how to understand which LLMs to use for which tasks. And I also do a lot of talent sourcing training, which is what I originally started doing in my business. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Very involved in the UK and South African markets, do a lot in the US, Australia. So very much a global footprint, which I enjoy.
So Vanessa, first questions first, right? In terms of, you and I always end up having lots of debates about this topic. And I'm going to ask you the question I always ask at the end, I'm going to ask first.
Okay.
Up your human, up your humane, or up your human OS? Which one are we going for?
Up your humane. And that was actually as a result of the team conference when I had a really good conversation with Louise Triance and Wendy McDougall. It was the night before I was doing the opening keynote. So we went and found a quiet space and us 3 ladies sat down and chatted and decided that I'd used Up Your Human for a year, and just talking about AI and the way people were using in the recruitment industry, it was about keeping the humane element too. So not just Up Your Human, being a better human being in the time of AI, but that compassionate, that empathy that seems to be missing a lot from companies. So yeah, Up Your Humane. That's it.
So that effectively what you're talking about is, apart from it just being wordplay, effectively it's when do you stay human and when do you augment with AI effectively?
Yes, great. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's quite a difficult distinction these days.
Yeah, it's in terms of coming through. So, okay. So look, I always start this question off with going, okay, so how did you fall into this AI thing?
Well, I think, being born with a healthy dose of ADHD and always looking for the new and what can I use and what can I get better at? I mean, I was basically overcome by passionate curiosity. And my journey was quite interesting because if we go back to November 2022, OpenAI launched ChatGPT, us mere mortals could start interacting with it. I'll be honest, I did nothing until about January because the whole of the Southern Hemisphere shuts down over Christmas. I mean, that's like you guys, like my UK clients, everyone's on leave at the moment. It's our summer break. And then when I came back in January 2023, I thought, well, let me actually try and figure this out. What is this AI thing about? And I went in, and the first thing I did was write me a Boolean search string. Well, Kalpesh, I tell you what, it was the worst search string I've ever seen in my life. And I actually was just like, well, this AI, it's an absolute crock, not interested. I'm going to keep doing and being me. And then, I'm an avid listener of podcasts and keeping an eye on what people are saying. I did a deep dive back in about 6 months later. And in 6 months, the way it had improved, and I started seeing all of these user cases for recruitment that, I'll be 100% honest with you, I dived into AI because I could see it eating my breakfast.
Yeah.
I mean, I've still got people at home who want to eat 3 meals a day and, that I need to support. So it was kind of like, I better jump onto this AI train because I don't know whether talent sourcing is going to be a thing for much longer. And, the rest is history. I'm super glad I did it.
So you came in it very much around your talent sourcing. And for those that don't know your background, you're a talent sourcer extraordinaire. Every time I talk to you, I learn about a new way and new trick coming through. So did you approach this with a talent sourcing lens, or did you just say, look, AI, help me with my life?
No, very much with a talent sourcing lens, because remember that for the last 7.5 years, I've been a trainer. So it's training people how to be better at talent sourcing, as well as doing freelance talent sourcing on the side to kind of keep my hand in the game. So it was, how can we use AI to enhance what we do? And I mean, I still remember the days when you'd put in a prompt and it would come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, I cannot help you. I've only been trained up till April 2020.
Yeah,
and you'd be like, well, I mean, what's that all about? So Kalpesh, it was with a recruitment lens. And then as the capabilities of AI have just literally, just like kind of, I don't know, it's like they've just hit another atmosphere. The possibilities of what we can do in the recruitment process as a whole just blow my mind every single day.
Yeah, I think, and then that's interesting. Whenever we talk to anyone about AI, and like you and I are both lucky, we talk to hundreds of recruiters, or hundreds of business people, actually, not just recruiters. We end up talking to different people. I think the big thing about AI is, you have to start somewhere. And I think where those people are nervous or scared about AI and, is it going to take my job? Is it going to change? It's like, well, look, if you let it, it will take your job, right? It's the same way if a more highly skilled person comes along and you haven't refreshed your skills, they will take your job, right? So I think it takes you back to sort of grasp. So when you're looking at AI and you're looking at potentially helping you from a sourcing lens, how do you start that journey?
So first of all, let's answer that simply and just say badly, because AI was really bad at talent sourcing for a very, very long time. I mean, if it's been around since November 2022, we're now seeing different large language models, and now people are talking about, ChatGPT versus Claude versus Gemini versus Copilot. When it all came out with ChatGPT, it wasn't a great way to source. And I would still say that it's actually not the best way to source. So one of the people I've just seen in the chat is Uncle Steve, and I'm presenting a Talent Acquisition Week in the US next week. And I've actually just been working on my presentation. And what I'm dropping at that conference is a really different, game-changing way of sourcing. I can't say anything about it right now. But what people don't realize is that when you go to ChatGPT or Claude and you type in, find me a list of data engineers based in London or whatever it is, it's searching the way that we would be talent sourcing. So for example, let me explain it. If we go to Google and we go site linkedin.com, data engineer London, we can then open up a Google page of results of people that we can see that are, could be pages and pages of results. And I presume for a simple search like that would be. Now, the reason for that is that LinkedIn actually has a file that sits on top of LinkedIn that is called a robot.txt file, which means that large language models cannot actually go and source directly on LinkedIn. So it's not a replacement for your LinkedIn recruiter. So what people don't realize then is that you can still pull the list. You can still go and find the people. And if you're savvy and you have the base talent sourcing skills and you have a talent sourcing mindset, you can actually do a lot of, let's call it damage with that list that you have pulled. But it can also search the internet at like warp speed. So, people need to realize that there's life outside of LinkedIn. You know, you can find people from who's speaking at conferences. You can find technical people on technical websites, who's running meetup groups, who's running communities. Like, there's so many different ways to find people. And that's where, at the speed that it does it, the large language models come into play. And that's a really important distinction to make. So it's a great starting point, but we still need to use that in order to take it and combine it with the knowledge we already have.
And I think that's a really important thing. And you and I have had far too many hours of conversations around, and that's where your humane comes into. And people, you can't outsource everything to AI, right? And I think where I see it with companies I work with and founders I work with, you know, they put everything into ChatGPT or Claude or whatever the model of choice is, but there's no check and balance to go, okay, well, is that right?
Yeah.
Or is instruction right? And the analogy I use going way back, you know, I'm of that generation where I still had to learn how to spell properly. You know, actually, if you don't know how to spell properly, you don't know if the word's right or wrong. So yes, you can use a thesaurus or a spell checker, but the spell checker can still get it wrong. So you have to still know the basic premise. When AI came in, and again, you and I had this conversation around, well, you know, you need a check and balance in place. So I know you run a lot of sessions around this as well, around training, and I know we can signpost some of your courses that you run. Is there any basic principles you give to people to say, look, when you go on this journey as a sourcing expert, this is the bit you need to keep human?
Absolutely. And I think there's bits that you got to keep human, and there are bits that you will inherently know as an experienced talent sourcer, which is why I am nervous for junior people coming into this industry. Because let's say, for example, I run 2 parallel searches. One is for call center agents based in Manchester, and the other one is for AI engineers in Manchester. I need to know that I'm going to find way more, 10x the number of call center people, 100x or customer service than what I'm going to find is of AI engineers. You know, the basic principles are so important. And I think that before you go in to try and source using these AIs, it's what does good look like?
Yep.
So a lot of people that are trained say, oh yeah, I use AI to generate Boolean search strings. And I'm like, cool, give me an example. And they put up a Boolean search string and I'm like, okay, that's not great. The syntax isn't great. It's not going to find exactly what you're looking for. It's either like too constricted, you're going to get like 2 results, or else you're going to end up with 25,000. You know, so knowing what good looks like is definitely a requirement. And then also, when it comes to upping your human with these kind of things, an example that I also always hear coming back from all over the world from people I'm training is, well, how we use ChatGPT is we take the role description, we put it into the chat, we throw in 5 CVs, and we ask the AI to tell us which is the best candidate. Now, if you've only got 5 candidates and 5 CVs, why are you being that lazy that you need to ask AI to actually go and tell you which one is the best? Because this talks to the point that you mentioned earlier of what do we hand over to AI, what should we be handing over, and what shouldn't we be? So essentially, you're replacing yourself with AI because you can't decide between 5 CVs which one is the closest match. So why are you working as a recruiter? I hate to sound harsh, but I mean, come on. I understand if you have got, and you're in Africa and you've got 2,000 graduate applications, you know, sure, get some kind of AI in front of that. But we've got to be very careful because and I'm sure we'll get to talk about this, the compliance and the risk and the EU AI Act and putting personal data, we've got problems.
Yeah, well, look, you know, that's a great. I was going to come at there, but it's probably as good a time as any to talk about. And again, you know, look, I fell into AI. So first of all, just a message for everyone. I love the fact you're all saying hello to us and taking the mickey out of the comments. Keep going. But don't forget, put your questions in. We'll get around to answering your questions. We'll either do them as we go along or we'll get to the end, whichever way we can. So please fire those questions into whichever medium you're looking at so we can pick those up. Okay, the law and AI. Okay, so when we were at the team conference, we held a panel on the Friday afternoon, and the EU AI Act came up. And look, the first thing I say to everyone when we get on the ChatGPT story or any LLM story is 2 things. Number one, if you are on a free version, your security settings and the controls you have are not as good as even if you're on the basic versions. That's number one. Number 2, there is a legal requirement. And I talk about like the dark web, Vanessa. It's like, if like the internet, you could go on a dark web and find anything if you know where it is and how to look for it.
Yep.
The LLMs work the same way. If you know how to crack the LLMs, pretty much if someone's not hidden something, you'll be able to find that material. So the EU AI Act and other legislation coming through, and any sort of tips on how you would approach it or how you do approach it when you're sourcing yourself?
So it's actually super interesting because I obviously have a lot of clients in the EU, and it's interesting to see how they go and try and approach this. So basically, recruitment as an activity, because humans are involved, falls into the high risk category according to the EU AI Act. Now, there were deadlines that were supposed to be reached this year, August, I believe, that have been pushed back into December 2027 because there's still too much gray area around this and what can we do, what can't we do. But that doesn't kind of absolve us of being able to, just do what we want. And again, when recruiters tell me they just take candidate CVs, they don't redact any information, they put, social security numbers, addresses, phone numbers, and all of those things into these tools, these LLMs. I don't know, it kind of like makes my hair stand on end because that is not what we should be doing. So to answer your question is that EU AI Act, I believe, is going to be pretty much a gold standard, the blueprint of what is going to be introduced across different areas. There's a lot of recruitment businesses now working globally, so they're affected by the EU AI Act at some point in time. So I just believe that we've got to be very, very careful. And one of the other common questions that I'm asked is, what is the safest version of a AI that we can use? And it's probably going to be the most expensive. It's the enterprise co-pilots locally, so stored locally, your server's local. So there's no internet getting in and out of your data. But I mean that's costs money, right?
It is.
So I think there's a lot to consider.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a question on there from Marcel in terms of the point saying, the free version and the paid version are exactly the same. It's like there is a difference. I think the point we were trying to make, Marcel, was you're right. The fundamental principles of how they work might be the same. However, depending on which LLM you're using, that's the health warning. Different LLMs have different security settings you can enable if you're using a paid or a free version. So as example, ChatGPT, which is one I love. If you're on a free version, you have very limited controls. If you're on a paid version, there's a security button saying don't use my data to train the models. But every LLM has its own version. And yes, we're not here to advocate actually everything is the same. So please make sure you go and do your own research, your own checking and balancing. Don't take Vanessa on my word to say that this is what we're saying, but we're just giving you some input and guidance on things to look at when you go on the journey.
Absolutely.
So going back to your point about understanding the sourcing agents. So when you're upping your human, you're talking about using AI agents. You and I have talked about different agents. So I love Claude and I love ChatGPT. What's your favorite frontier model of choice at the moment?
Depends what I'm trying to do, in all honesty. Like if I think back to my morning where I've been doing quite a lot of research, as I was saying, for my presentation next week in the US, I've been using a combination because I want to see what gives me different results, which prompts work better where. I'm trying to build a scoring rubric based on results depending on certain prompts. So definitely from a day-to-day work experience, it's Claude because Claude generates great content. And it really is fantastic for things like building proposals, training notes from when I've delivered training, helping build blogs, newsletters, those kind of things. And I love the way that you can train Claude so easily, building skills to make it sound like you. It just makes it so much easier on the other side because you're doing so much less editing and those kind of things. I have been trying a little bit more with the new ChatGPT versions. I mean, funny story, I woke up last Monday morning, jumped onto ChatGPT and literally everything had changed. Codex is now coming into play. The user interface is different. There's a new app you've got to download. And I was literally that evening training a team in New York. And I was like, I am running 90-minute training session on ChatGPT and it's literally all completely changed. I know what I'm doing for the rest of the day. So that's how difficult it is to really stay up to date with these things. So for me, the LLM depends on the user case. What am I trying to do? Those kind of things.
Okay, and I think that's the other thing that's worth remembering, that there's probably two elements of when we go on this journey. And we haven't even talked about all the software products out there. All we're talking about at the moment are the frontier models, the LLMs. Each of them do
Yeah.
something different. They each have different superpowers. Probably the way to look at
Yeah.
it. So when one of the things that you do is you have your magic page, as I kind of refer to it, where you do all the work for us to actually work out what tools are worth having, what tools aren't worth having. How much time do you spend looking at different tools every month? Because you have that page gets updated quite regularly, right?
Actually, yeah, it's super interesting. I'm actually going to put a link to that page into the chat quickly while we're talking about it, while I remember. And I actually wrote a blog about that this morning, to be honest. My newsletter today, I do a newsletter every 2 weeks, and it was about what are the questions people should be asking. Because I tell you what, Kalpesh, at least once or twice a day at the moment, I'm getting messages in my inbox around the whole, I'm going to build an amazing tool. It's going to replace recruiters. You're going to be a millionaire by like next week, Tuesday. And I'm like, no, come on. And I would rather do the testing, see whether I like the tool, whether it's viable, ask the really difficult questions, and then put those onto my, as you call it, my magic tool page. That's an interesting way of thinking of it. I might have to use that. And those are the tools that I've tried and tested that, for me are the ones that I would trust where their data comes from. I've actually just this last week done a massive audit of that page too, and getting in touch with people to say, this is how many clicks you guys have got, how the stats looking on your side, is everything still in order, has anything changed, what's your roadmap? There's lots of different conversations to have. Are you still compliant? What are your thoughts around this, new EU AI Act, if that's where they're based? So it's actually been a really interesting exercise. Today and last night, I was on calls, late to the US and chatting to people, and everyone's kind of keeping their nose clean at the moment, but as much as they can until, anything changes with regards to laws and regulations.
So I know we've got a few people talking about, on this conversation with the chats about, where do I start? How do I get going? So, what advice do you normally give to people when they say, look, I've never used AI before. Everyone keeps telling me I've got to get on the journey or I'm going to get left behind. Where do you tell people to normally start?
Sure. I think the easiest thing to do is to start by testing out the frontier models. And when you talk about the frontier models, for myself, the frontier models, I know that you get the four, which is, your ChatGPT, your Claude, your Copilot, your Gemini. I also like to include Grok in that. I like Perplexity. I've been trying out the new Kimi, K-I-M-I. There's lots of different ones to try. On my start.me page, there's a couple of ones that you can try now. Mistral, also a big one out of France, is to go and use what you can from a token perspective on the free versions, because there is going to be one that you have a bit of an affinity to. And that's, we're just assuming that everyone listening here is recruiters, right? So, then we're talking recruiter language, which I'm sure a lot of people are, but there's also teams that I work with that are marketing companies or engineering companies. Being married to a professor at university, we have lots of discussions about which LMS is best for your user case and what you do for your work processes. So it would be going to test out all of the different AI LLMs and then decide which one you like the best. And then my best advice is literally go and get really, really good at using that one, and never underestimate the University of YouTube, because that is just an incredible place to learn how to get better at using these LLMs and how to get the most flex out of them. And I hate to say it, because we don't like to pay for anything, especially South Africans, is choose the one you like and pay for it. Because it's a whole $20 US. It's not hugely expensive, but pay for one and get the best experience of using the most up-to-date models.
And try it properly. I think that's the key thing, in terms of, it's no point beauty parading 4 or 5 different things and not trying it out properly. If we go back through the sessions with team, we've got content you can have to how to write prompts properly. In terms of, you need to spend that investment and time on, just putting in, give me X. like a standard book, you need to invest in that prompt to make sure it's a good prompt that you get the right results back.
Yeah.
The other side of it, I think, and I think Steve talks about it in the chat as well. Steve mentioned start with a specific goal, and I kind of always say, well, if you're new to AI, start off with trying something that you already understand and you can measure the success and not the success that goes against it. So start off with a real micro task, when you come into AI, rather than trying to go, right, I'm going to reinvent the whole workflow and process and trying to make something super complicated, because that's what normally people go into AI, they do that. Start off with something really simple and say, look, I can measure whether AI is better, worse, the same, because I have this process locked down that actually makes sense as well. So are there any things that you've seen that are quick and easy things to get people trying to get going with?
So I think, definitely, you've got to start with something when I always refer to it as, you got to know what good looks like. And I think that's a good example to use. Other things are prompt engineering. So what always amuses me is when AI first broke out, everyone was like, oh, recruiters, get ready. You're going to have to recruit prompt engineers. Like, that's going to be your main thing. And I always chuckle because I was like, no one's ever recruited a prompt engineer, because we all become prompt engineers. So, I do talk about the University of YouTube. Some of those videos are, I don't know, it's like these people are on like steroids or something when it comes to AI. It really is quite, high-flying information. So what I would suggest is, do your best to get some kind of like a good head start on the training. It's fantastic to say, learn how to write a good prompt. There's loads of different frameworks out there. Yes, you've got to give it a lot of context. You've got to be specific. Think about it like you're speaking to a human being. But for me, probably the key thing, which would tick all of those boxes and make sure that you would do that, is start interacting with your AI by using voice. A lot of people are still typing, okay? And what they're doing is that they are still typing in prompts where, let's face it, recruiters hate admin. They get bored. They don't give as much information they should. If you spoke to it, you would actually get a lot more context across, and then you would think of it maybe more as an assistant as opposed to a glorified Google. So my advice and my training is interact with it. I was even listening to a podcast recently that the next ChatGPT version, which will probably be GPT-6, is going to be first and foremost a voice interactive kind of model. So that is the way for me to give it more, because you will by default just give more context.
I think it's a real good example is I work with someone who literally spends their time talking to their model that they use, and then every day summarizes a school of thought of everything that's come out of there. In terms of it's a business problem they're trying to solve, it's a sourcing problem they're trying to solve, it's an ops problem, but they just talk about all the different problems that they, and actually because they're spending probably far too many hours, maybe in my opinion, talking to their models every day. What it's doing is it's learning context, it's learning about them. So the results get better. And I think it's also worth reminding everyone that, look, when you start up with an LLM or any form of frontier model or any product that's AI, it starts with zero context, zero knowledge, right? Even if it's been trained, it's zero. So what you have to do is you have to invest that time to improve and train it and educate as well. So just remember that when you start anything up, it takes time. It's like anything. It's like there's a knowledge base it has to improve. It needs to learn about you. It needs to understand what's relevant. You probably need to tell it a few times that was rubbish. You should do this again. The amount of times.
And I think that's just to stop it. I think that's where people actually start going wrong from the outset. I mean, just a simple exercise, like every single LLM, you can go and have a look at the settings. There's a personalization feature of sorts. Just putting some information in there about, who you are, what do you do, what's your title, what is the main use that you have for AI, just makes such a difference to the results that are coming up. But the number of teams that are trained that are like, oh, I never even knew this existed, because it's kind of like you sign up and then you just like, okay, let's just get started. And it's got zero context. I mean, it really is quite frustrating, is that I think we sometimes, and people have a bad experience with AI because they just expect a whole lot, but you can't expect it when it has no context. And it's almost like it's been set up for failure in a lot of instances.
Thank you, Becky. Yeah, really good. And the fact you're talking to it, it's great. And yeah, the side product, if you can use less credits
I'll
in the
let in a
process,
little
brilliant.
secret is that
Go
Becky
on.
did my training about 3 months ago. And,
Oh, okay. So what we said, we've got someone that's got evidence. Okay, that's good. We started off talking about sourcing, right? So I'm going to park sourcing for a minute because you're right. You and I are business owners where we do coaching in a number of different guises. It's not just around talent. So if we think about AI from a business owner or a recruiter that does lead gen, etc., is the context exactly the same, or do you think there's a different way of approaching it?
I think there's a different way of approaching it because of what we do as business owners. Like there's so many different aspects of our business, from understanding the financials to marketing to business development to operations to there is just so much more. And I think that is where the game changer has come in for me, is that I am so much quicker around my admin and repurposing content. Let's say, for example, gosh, I've actually seemed to have done so much in the last 2 weeks. I've presented at conferences, been guests on webinars and podcasts, and one of the things I always asked was that transcript, because I've already got I've already said the data. Like you and I having a conversation here, I'm basically having a verbal vomit from my brain and putting it over here. Today's newsletter that came out around the AI vendors was actually based on a training session that I did on an hour for UK business owners, guiding them around which AI tools they should be looking to purchase. Because once you have said that information, there's so many ways to repurpose the data. And that for me as a business owner has been gold.
Yeah.
Because I can really then convert that into loads more content. I've got time to, build out a YouTube channel. It's just incredible what it can do if you can imagine it. So a little bit like the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Like if you can think of it, of what you want to do in your business and what you want to change, you can actually do it. And probably the one caveat I'd like to say there is that I say no to very little work now, because I know that as long as I've got a basic understanding of what the client wants, I will be able to do it with assistance, with AI.
So one of the big things, Vanessa, is like there's that fear that AI is taking everyone's jobs.
Yeah.
But we've just started the conversation saying, actually, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you've got to keep human.
True. And I don't think, like, AI couldn't do my job.
No.
Like, yes, I have built an avatar. I've used HeyGen. It wouldn't be able to be having this conversation. It's very much said as an assistant to help me to be more productive and more effective at my job. And let's face it, I mean, I'm training tonight to a company, East Coast of the US, start at 7 p.m. What it's going to do is it's going to buy me 2 hours this afternoon after this, where I can take a walk and head down to the beach and it's whale season and look for whales. If there wasn't AI, I probably wouldn't be able to free up an hour or two just to get out the house and, go and see if I can see some whales. And that for me is the game changer, is that it's freeing up a lot of time in order for me to do other things which make me a happier person, which give me time to step away from the business, think maybe a little bit differently, and then come back. And then, if I can think it while I'm out walking, let me try and build it when I get back.
No, that's, I think if it's one thing we want to try and get across from today is like, look, we talked about people being scared about AI, and we talked about AI naive. I think when we talked about conversations in the past, what we're talking about is how do we help everyone become AI native?
Yeah.
And
we have to.
And the analogy I use is like 25 years ago when the internet came along, in anger, no one thought you'd need online presence or shop fronts, etc. Then we had bricks and mortar, and then we thought retail's dying. There's a whole bunch of reasons, but the reality is you had to embrace the internet if you wanted to survive. And I think this is the same conversation that with the way the world of staffing and recruitment is evolving, AI is not going away. It's going to become more and more as part of our journey and part of the tool set. One of the things I think, I'm just going to go back to a question that was asked earlier on about the EU AI Act and how it impacts. We would be here for hours talking about that. So I think we've probably got ourselves another reason, Simon, to actually have a session another time to talk about the EU AI Act.
Definitely.
Coming back to today, I think one of the things that you and I talked about 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how do you use it to prospect or lead gen? and you and I have different approaches of what we do because of, I'm not a sourcing expert. I'm a biz dev guy. I do advisory work on the side as well. Using AI tools to help you do that is super valuable. So is there anything that you think that you've seen, and you can name check or not name check, your choice, things that you've seen and go, okay, these tools I can see how they change the game today, or potentially they can change the game?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm very blessed, Kalpesh. I'm not going to lie. I don't use my AI as a business development tool because at the moment I'm so busy. I actually, a new client is a little bit of a scary thought for me. But I'm very blessed. I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. But similarly to the way that you would use AI to do talent sourcing, it's about interacting with it and giving it enough context. And explaining exactly what you do. You can help find similar companies. I mean, I've seen people take silver medalist candidates and say, I've got this great candidate, they're on the market, they've already resigned, this is the kind of work they do, this is the industries that they work in. You could also then go and say, find companies who are currently advertising on their careers pages for similar roles that I could get in touch with and market this candidate to. Again, it's just about interacting with a lot of context and imagining it that's your assistant. Off you go and do a search. If it takes you 10 minutes, then so be it. Then come back and tell me, what did you find? So yeah, I think that's it's about the context. So there's definitely a user case of using business development and AI with that. And actually, if you have a look at my list of tools, there's some fantastic business development tools on there. So
yeah, I think when I talk to anyone, then and again, you and I joked about all the different tools in this particular category. So we were talking about note takers the other week, and I know you've got a couple. I think we were on a call at one point. You and I had you and I were the humans on the call, and you were trying a couple, and I was trying a couple. But the two I had on there, that both had very different outputs in terms of coming through. So it goes back to making sure you choose a tool coming through. I think the advice I give to everyone now is, note takers are table stakes. You should have some form of transcripting tool if you're doing meetings. I sat in a meeting yesterday.
Everyone's got a voice recorder on their phone.
Yeah. Look, I sat in a meeting yesterday with a young man called Cyborg, who we both know. We did 3 hours in a meeting, and he had his whatever tool he was using, recording the whole session. Obviously, he was very honest to say he's recording it. So point number one, if you're using recording, etc., make sure you tell people you're doing it. Forget the law. It's just a nice thing to do. It's the right thing to do as well. But he came out of it with a whole bunch of insights I didn't even remember saying. And that was the insight. So this morning when we met, we were able to do something quicker because we'd actually solved the problem in the meeting, but skipped over it because we were busy talking about something else. So I think, I say they're table stakes, they're baseline. Everyone should have some form of note taker or transcription tool that they can have on their calls with them, etc.
Because else you're losing all of that good things that you discuss in all those data points that you're talking about in any conversation. Like, just thinking about it now, I should have actually put my voice recorder on now to record this conversation. There'll be another way to get it. I will, but I mean, that would have been the quickest. And then I've got it on my phone and I can just download the transcript.
Very, very kindly, team are going to record this for us so they can share the transcript for us. So it's good.
Thank you, Jahisha.
Everyone coming through. Okay, so we talked a lot about AI. Don't be scared. Become AI native. If you were talking to anyone today and said, right, these are the things don't use AI for, what would they be?
So for me, it would be anywhere where there is contact between human beings. So for example, you need to pick up the phone. You need to have a conversation. I know a lot of people are using it for email. I had a good chuckle yesterday. I got a message from a client, and I could see from the different font style and size where AI had generated some of it. They had then adapted some of it. They then added in an extra line, and I thought, oh my God, that is such a bad use of AI and email. So for me, use it, yes, but I do think that the key thing is when you would rather be talking to a human being yourself. And if you can think like that with a recruiter mindset, is that, it's like, I was chatting to a friend this morning in Sweden, and we were just saying, that the recruiter that she's been dealing with sends people an email and says, we're not going to be doing interviews until August. And like for me, that if someone's already done 2 interviews, that would never be an email. It would be a phone call to explain, these people are on leave. This was happening. It's summer up here. Please don't worry. Where else are you interviewing? How much time have we got with this? There's so much more you can just get from that conversation. So it's, for me, first and foremost, wherever possible, you want to keep the human. So
Yep.
I understand if you have a look at it, and what happens in this country a lot is that, there's grad recruitment. You've got 4,500 graduates applying for 10 positions. You need AI somewhere in there, somewhere in that process. But, if you're down to 5 suitable candidates, phone them all. Why not? That's why you went into recruitment. You want to be able to, have conversations with people and get as much information, out of them as you can.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely great. I mean, it's also, you can also take a first snip of if someone has sent you a whole bunch of information, how you digest it, how you can pull out some key trends, how you can pull out the key topics that you want to come through. Real quick one for those listening on this call, unless you're a lawyer, even if you're a lawyer, please do not go and do what the classic person does. I'll just stick this in an LLM, build my legal T's and C's. Remember, you still need experts to check these things out. Just because you've got ChatGPT or Claude says this is perfect, doesn't mean it's perfect. On that note, one thing I am going to say, and you actually taught me this 2 years ago, indirectly, because you talked about critics. Who's your critic in the room, right? So everyone talks about LLMs and putting in nice things. Tell me why this is great. Tell us why it's amazing. Build me an amazing document. Build your biggest critics as well. Right, I think they converse, because I think one of the things that I find quite valuable is they are super harsh when you need to be as well, right? So the amount of times I've had, this is perfect, this is amazing, this is ready to ship and be productive as a content piece. I then stick it back in and go, now tell me why this is not good enough, or tell me why, if I'm sending it to Simon Bliss, tell me what Simon Bliss is going to tell me based on previous interactions on why it's rubbish.
And I think that's like. Stop being such a bloody people pleaser, right?
Yeah.
Stop telling me what you think I want to hear.
That's what all these models do. They only give you good news. So you have to build your critic, your advisor, whoever you want on the flip side, going, tell me why this isn't good enough. Tell me why this will improve. I do it quite regularly with copy that I send out and saying, right, is this now 10 out of 10? No. Okay, well, if it's not 10 out of 10, go. I know we've got some people in here in fact, we've got around the world on this call today. When I send copy out that's perfect for the UK, if I send the same copy out to America, it will flop. So I use my models to basically say, based on what I've trained you and what you know about me and how I can communicate, review this content, tell me why it will not land in the USA.
Yeah.
So it's really, and obviously the most common thing is disease, coming through. We're almost running out of time. I know we've had so many different questions come through.
Have I answered all the questions? Sorry, it's actually been so quick.
No, we have.
I got questions. I got questions for you. How are you?
What's your story?
So I was late. Now, I want, as a recruit with my recruiter hat on, what functions can you get agents to perform to make your life easier? Well, you already talked about some sourcing for high volume candidates, but I know, Kalpesh, you're involved with building some agents, and you've given us some wonderful direction in the past, Vanessa, on how to do that without spending loads of money. But I just thinking with your recruiters' hats on, what functions can we get agents to perform that will make our day simpler and streamline the business to be more productive, so we can be more human?
Good question. Very good question. I'll start with an example that I use. And that is, I've got a whole lot of scheduled tasks running that when I wake up in the morning and get to my laptop, there's already reports that are, what is my day? What is in my to-do list? What do I have, emails that need to be answered? What have I delayed? What have I put off? So it's basically helping me that I don't have to go to a lot of different places before my day starts. I have everything in one place, and I know then from my action plan what can I do. So there's that one. I also have one that does social listening, so it can tell me what's trending, what's happening in the recruitment world, and then help me to address and speak to those topics when I'm interacting or creating content. Kalpesh, what about you?
So I do it the other way. So I've got the organization was great. So I have actually got an agent called a chief of staff, right? And my chief of staff every morning sends me a summary of my emails, my WhatsApps, my LinkedIn, and it summarizes all the different messages. Say, right, these are all the messages you've had. These are all your unreads. And I was really embarrassed when I got my first list of unreads because there was too many. But then it tells me about the priority, right? Okay, here's the first 3 things you need to act on because they're mission critical. Or so that's one element we do. I also love the fact that I do social listening as well. So I ran something with one of the tools that I use. I went to an event called Wreckfest in the UK. Basically, I listened for every post that mentioned Wreckfest, and that became my lead list to go and follow up. But also gave me good conversations to have, and also the talks I couldn't go to at Wreckfest, I learned about them because people started giving summaries. So it was an education piece coming through. And then the final agent that I think is really simple is like, right, depending on the job that you're doing, it's either how do you organize, how do you take intelligence and synthesize it so you can get over it quicker. But also, if you're in a sales role, how can you do either new business development quickly and effectively? So if all you're going to do is make 10 calls today, make sure they're the 10 best calls you can potentially make with insight and relevance. But also, as recruiters, and whether you're candidate facing, client facing, it doesn't matter. How do you manage your existing customers and keep them relevant? So, in outside of recruitment, it's called account-based sales. If you worked in SaaS, how do you basically find white space in your existing clients to sell more? But also, how do you track your candidates if your candidates are moving, right? So for those of you that have high volume markets, how do you keep in touch with people moving between jobs? So I use it in one of my businesses, Simon, where I track all the decision makers I've ever placed with, and we built the tool where it tracks every time that decision maker's moved, we know they've become a future prospect in a new client.
That's grand.
Yep. Great user cases. And there's also a great one from Becky in the chat as well. I love what she says there. She's got an agent there that does tailored interview prep for her. Once she puts in all of the information, CV, job spec, call notes, and then it creates a nice interview specific guide for that candidate, which is a great idea. Well done, Becky.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Just going back to Rebecca, no, I don't use Copilot. I use a different tool, but it doesn't matter. Going back to the original point, whatever technology you use, it can do something, right? So Copilot have a feature, Google has a feature, it will get you so far, but there's a reason why there's a whole bunch of software on top that you can buy because it accelerates it.
I think the next step for a lot of people is to start exploring things like plugins, connectors, and figuring out how do they actually interact with each other, and how can you pull in, like you can connect your Claude to your Outlook, things like that. I think that's the next step for a lot of people who think, oh yes, I use ChatGPT, I'm good, I'm a power user. Go and explore that. Look at plugins, look at connectors, and take it to the next level.
Yeah, and I think, look, the starting point, going back to the original point that we started off, and Simon, we had this conversation in November when we started this series about why we wanted to put it together, was, look, number one, don't be scared, right?
Yeah.
You have control over what AI can do next as long as you set up properly, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, go and get some training. We talked about YouTube videos. We've talked about Vanessa Raff's training sessions that she runs. We've talked about Tim Bennett, who's done some sessions on the AI Impact series beforehand. But invest in yourself. Get some training, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you can learn it as you go. But having some baseline is very invaluable as well. And then the third element of it is, you've got to have that curious mindset. Just because you've built something once, don't think it's going to be perfect forever. The speed that AI is changing,
especially when the model changes.
Yeah. The model changes, the logic changes a little bit. You've got to keep reinventing it. And also, I've done this. I built something I thought was the most amazing prompt at the start of the year to build my business plans. I built a business plan the other day. It was rubbish because the context was completely wrong. So you have to go back and rework these things as well. And I think the start, we haven't mentioned this word yet today, Vanessa. We've done well. 49 minutes in, we haven't mentioned guardrails. Make sure you've got your own guardrails in place of what is your restrictions on, this is all you can do. You can't do anything outside it.
Exactly, 100%. I think that comes down for me with the context. Tell it what it must do and tell it what it mustn't do is really important in your prompts. So just as you were talking there, Kalpesh, putting together something which I recently had to update because things had changed. If people want to go and run an assessment and see how AI fluent they are in this day and age, there is a nice free assessment for them to go and have a look at. And I think that the key thing is just keep pushing yourself, because one of the key differences that I'm seeing at the moment is people that I'm meeting, before I do the training, I have a half an hour meeting with them. And some people are like, yo, I'm great. I use ChatGPT extensively because I can hear they don't think they really want to do the training. And then you start talking about custom GPTs, you start talking about codecs, you start, talking about developing MD skill files, and they nowhere. Or else you chat to someone and say, oh, I'm just under the starting blocks, and they're talking about Claude skills, Claude projects. People just don't know where they stand because they don't know who to measure themselves against. And I think everyone's a little bit more, should I say, show-offy on how they use AI because everyone wants to be perceived as that they're using it like superstars. So I don't think the honesty element is always there,
Yep.
but I think we need to be humble. And what we need to realize is that, we've always got something to learn, even myself, so that's why I refer to myself as the SME in AI, the subject matter enthusiast, not the subject matter expert, because we are all learning. Because all it takes is like my Monday morning last week when I wake up and Sam Altman and OpenAI have completely changed ChatGPT, and I've literally got about 6 hours to learn the new version before I train again.
Yeah, they don't make it easy for you coming through. I think the question that someone asked earlier on, what do I use for the LinkedIn post? I actually use my own product, Create Matter, but there are a bunch of tools you can use out there. You don't have to use my one, right? The point is start thinking about what you can do to give you those marginal gains, right? Those extra minutes back to be able to do something else that's more productive. And I've been that business leader was like, yeah, if I'm using these tools, you can get 2 hours a week back. It doesn't necessarily mean that those 2 hours a week are used for actually doing more work or more productive or more outputs. It could be used to think and reflect and tidy up your business, or actually spend more time with your best clients. So there's lots of different things you can use that time that AI gives you to do in more ways. But remember, initially, there is an investment period. It will take more time as you get up and running to get AI up and going. You actually will need more time, not less time, to get the best out of AI.
And I think that's also what people don't realize is that when you're actually, really getting into it and you're getting stuck in and you are building, loads and loads of skills and you want it to get better, that's a time investment in itself. And I think a lot of people get frustrated and actually give up because it's taking too much time, it's taking too many tokens. Let me just go back to using, LLMs like a glorified Google. Because the time to train it is the same as training humans sometimes.
And it's really interesting, your point you mentioned about the tokens and models, right? The natural human instinct is just go for the fastest one to do everything, right? And the analogy I've used quite often recently is like, you don't use a Ferrari to go down to the local supermarket. You use the right vehicle. You don't always need the fastest, most newest model to solve the problems.
Yeah.
You need the right tools to solve the right problems and give the right outputs.
I realized that after I burned through a lot of Fable 5 tokens.
Oh dear! And then you have to wait for 6 hours till they come back. Yeah, in terms of coming through.
5 hours that can seem like at least 66.
Wow. Okay. So I've got one last question, and I'll hand over to you, Simon, to close. If there's one thing people did when they left this call today, what would you ask them to go and do?
I would say pick your weapon. Like, you've got to make a call at some point, put a stake in the ground and just get really good at that one. I'm not saying ignore the others. You can still always have access and use them for free. So if I want to create a certain type of image, I go to Gemini. I don't pay for Gemini, but I like the way it generates an image. But for kind of a couple of prompts to get my image right, it works perfectly. But it would be go and have a look at all of the LLMs that you use. If you're only sticking to ChatGPT, try the others, then decide you're going to pay for it, and then get training in that and use it really, really well, because that is the game changer. People that are using it well are just getting so much more out of it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Over to you, Mr. Bliss.
Well, the only bit I'd add, and I am a dinosaur, and there's a couple of dinosaurs out there. John Doherty's just admitted to being one as well. we've been doing quite a bit of sales outreach recently with Michael and David out in Joburg in South Africa. Some great people out there supporting team and the expansion of the network. And thanks to Co-Recruit, which is a tool we use for note takers, the top man there did a wonderful session for us last week on how you can use Co-Recruit to build your training model with your LLM. And what it's done by putting the recorded sessions into a project, it automatically gives us tips and guidance on each call and how we could have improved that. And because once we set some standards and outcomes, it automatically builds KPIs for the team, including me, on how we're doing, because I've been doing it too. And I'm sometimes haven't scored as well as the new boys, so it's been embarrassing. But it's honestly, it's in terms of management time and speeding up training, it's been astonishing that just the new, like you said, you had that session with Sai, it picks up nuances you forget in the conversation and gives you some guidance on changing script or using another analogy or story to really impact your messaging. So that I was astonished at how much it could do in such a short space of time and strip out loads of management time for me. It was amazing. So yeah, you said it earlier, I think, Vanessa, it will do everything. Be ambitious with what you want it to do, and you'll be amazingly surprised. But choose your weapon. Choose your weapon.
Yeah.
Choose your weapon. Start with something small that you can measure the impact on.
Yeah. Kalpesh, thank you for putting all of these sessions together with a wonderful group of very talented people, SMEs, all of us, still learning, aren't we, Vanessa? And what a great way to finish with our lovely Vanessa.
One thing to just finish off with is, like, for everyone listening, is look out. We actually have one more session to come.
Oh.
We haven't quite pinned it in yet.
Yeah.
The last session is going to bring the experts back from all the different series together, and we're going to do a mashup for different views on what we've learned.
Awesome. Sounds good.
There's some crackers in there, and they bounce off each other beautifully. So thank you.
Good luck with coordinating the diaries on that one.
Yeah,
I'm going to use AI. Actually, I'm not going to use AI. I'm going to use Jahisha. This is where you use having human in the loop.
Exactly. Well, thank you both. It's been a great session. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. And if you want some of the other sessions, contact us and we'll send you the links to the other sessions as well if you've missed those. Bye for now, folks.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.